Kumar Das and Professor V. Santakumar to this webinar. And the topic of this webinar is implications of new education policy for school and higher education. And so before I get into introduce the topic, I would like to introduce both speakers to the audience. So I'll start with Professor Ashok Kumar Das. Professor Ashok Kumar Das was a scientist in BARC, that is Bhabha Atomic Research Center. He was basically heading the Laser and Plasma Technology Division in BARC, Mumbai. And then he joined in Utkal University as basically he joined as Vice Chancellor of Utkal University in 2014. And after completing his tenure in Utkal University, he took charge as the Vice Chairman of Odisha State Higher Education Council. And now currently he is also serving as the Vice Chairman of the Odisha State Higher Education Council. So I welcome you, sir, to this webinar. And I also would like to thank you on behalf of Niger, particularly the School of Humanities and Social Science for accepting this invitation and agreeing to speak in this webinar. And then we have with us Professor V. Santakumar. Professor V. Santakumar is currently working at Azim Premji University, Bangalore. And he obtained his, basically he is an engineer turned economist. He did his BTech, and then after that he did job for some time, and then he joined IIT Madras for doing his PhD, and then he went to Netherlands and US for doing his postdoc, and then he joined Center for Development Studies, Thiruvananthapuram, as a faculty member, and where I was a student of Professor Santakumar. I did my PhD under his supervision, and now Professor Santakumar has left Center for Development Studies, and currently he is working at Azim Premji University, Bangalore. So I welcome you, sir, to this webinar. And on behalf of the School of Humanities and Social Sciences, Niger, I welcome you to this webinar, and also I thank you for accepting this invitation. Now, coming to the topic is implications of new education policy for school and higher education. And so Professor V. Santakumar will focus on the implications of this new education policy for the school education, and Professor Ashok Das will speak on the implications of this new education policy for higher education. Now, to give a brief introduction to this new education policy, now I should say some little bit of history and then the objectives. In fact, government started consultation to come up with a new education policy way back in 2016, and then based on a lot of feedbacks, the government basically set up a committee for evaluation of the new education policy under the chairmanship of, let's say, T.S.R. Subramaniam, former cabinet secretary, and they submitted a draft national education policy 2016. After that, the government again set up another committee led by Professor Dr. K. Kasturirangan, and the Kasturirangan committee did wider consultation, and then finally they submitted the report on May 31st, 2019. And that report, basically that draft report, created a lot of debates and discussion. And after that, finally government has come up with the new education policy 2020. Now, if you have gone through the report by any chance, then the broad, there are a lot of different aims and objectives have been specified, but I would only speak a few of them. The first one that attracted me is that this policy aims to have an education system in India by 2030 that is second to none, with equitable access to the highest quality education for all learners, regardless of social or economic background. Similarly, the policy also proposes the revision and revamping of all aspects of education structure, including its regulation and governance, to create a new system that is aligned with the aspirational goals of 21st century education, including the Sustainable Development Goal 4, while building upon India's tradition and value system. If you look at the fundamental principles that is stated in the report or in the new education policy, it says that there will be no hard separation between arts, science, between curricular and extracurricular activities. There will be no distinction between vocational and academic streams in order to eliminate harmful hierarchies among and the silos between different areas of learning. Similarly, it also emphasizes upon multidisciplinarity and a holistic education across the sciences, social sciences, arts, humanities, and sports for a multidisciplinary world in order to ensure the unity and integrity of all knowledge. It also emphasizes upon creativity and critical thinking, and then it emphasizes upon a policy that is known as light but tight regulatory framework to ensure integrity, transparency, and resource efficiency of the educational system through audit and public disclosure while encouraging innovation and out of the box ideas through autonomy, good governance, and empowerment. It also emphasizes upon outstanding research. So these are some of the aims and fundamental principles of the policy. Now, with this brief introduction to the new education policy, now I welcome Professor V. Shankar Kumar to speak on the implications of this new education policy for the school education. So I welcome, sir. Now the floor is yours.
I think I'll take about
20 minutes or so
Yes.
to
to
give some key
give some
highlights of
key
this
highlights of this
new education
new education policy.
with respect to school education. And then probably towards the end, I will make a few observations on, or my observations on the kind of possible challenges in implementing this policy. I think one of the fundamental point or an interesting point is the inclusion of early childhood education as part of the mainstream or formal schooling. Actually, for quite some time, cognitive scientists and also economists have tried to understand this particular issue. And now the understanding is that the infants or children at that stage have a lot of abilities to learn, or lack of opportunities to learn at that stage could be harmful for their lifelong learning, or even an economist would say that even lifelong earnings, not only learnings, but also earnings. So I think now there is a recognition of the importance of the early childhood education. And I think this policy has made a significant effort to include that as part of the formal schooling. And that's an important step in this new education policy. So now, because of that, I think the overall school system for 12 years, now they are proposing to sort of reorganize it from age 3 to say 18, and with the 3 years of early childhood education, and then primary, and then you have up to the secondary, which include 9 to 10 and 11 to 12. So this many years of education is somewhat reorganized in such a way that it includes early childhood education, and there is enough focus on early childhood education. Another important point is of course, it is related to the language aspect. I think here the policy is a little flexible. I would call flexible is good, but at the same time, it may create a lot of problems at the time of implementation, and we will talk more about that. I think it recognizes the importance of the mother tongue in early stages, especially at least up to primary schooling. And at least in Orissa, we know that there were efforts to have the mother tongue of the tribal people for their primary schooling, and there were some efforts. There were mother tongue used at least up to the standard 3, and to some extent, I would say that this policy recognizes the importance of those steps. Of course, the problem with the mother tongue in India is a little more complex, because I'm sure that because of the migrant population, there are people who have one regional language but living in another city with a different regional language or the local language. So what do we really mean by mother tongue? No, does mother tongue means the original language of the parents, or the local language in that particular place, or considering that some of them are migrant population, will there be a kind of a national language or an international language? And so that's a little bit, I would say, a flexible or somewhat unclear path. But at the same time, there is this recognition of the importance of mother tongue for early years of education. I think that's an important step. Another important point is regarding the vocational education. And this is an area where there have been quite a lot of debates and quite a lot of international experience. But the approach taken by the new education policy is that vocational education is a good thing, at least from the middle school onwards, but we should not be segregating children for one stream which can go for the vocational education and another which can go for the mainstream education. And such segregation will lead to certain amount of socioeconomic or persistence of socioeconomic inequalities. So what they have done is to suggest or recommend vocational education for all children, and it can be in multiple skills, not only one. No, it can be even multiple skills. It could be something related to carpentry, electrician, plumbing, and so on, or it could be related to the artisanal skills. No? So the purpose of this vocational education need not necessarily to give them expertise skill in a particular vocation, but probably to give an exposure to the importance of vocation. So that way, and moreover, I think following Gandhi's approach, I think here vocation can also be seen as a pedagogical tool for teaching other subjects, science or mathematics and so on. So that is an interesting point in this particular case. Another important point, I think we all know that the Right to Education Act has at least formally accepted the importance of schooling for all till the age of 16, and there is an attempt in the new policy to extend that to the age of 18. But we know that enrollment has gone up drastically, and that's not an issue. At least we have reached nearly 98% or 99% of enrollment. The key problem is the dropout at the secondary grades. Secondary grade dropout continues to be an important issue. And if you do a disaggregated analysis, those who are dropping out are more likely to come from the underprivileged social groups. So here there is a little more focus on addressing that dropouts and to ensure that all children complete at least 12 years of formal schooling, or maybe 15 years of schooling, including early childhood education. So that's an important step, and for which I think it's not elaborating all kinds of strategies, but at the same time, for example, in the girls, I think they are talking about an additional fund. They are talking about strengthening the Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalaya, and there are a number of steps. But this commitment, of course, the problem is that even with this commitment, there could be an issue of enforcement, and we will come to that later. Because there are quite a lot of other issues which may also impact dropout rate. So then the teacher education is another important area where there is a change. I think the conventional teacher education, where the B.Ed program is happening in a separate college, and most of these colleges are not of good quality, and this is for a very short period of time. And there is a realization that the B.Ed has to be integrated with a good quality undergraduate program. So that is why I think they are suggesting that the basic qualification for a teacher will become a 4-year undergraduate program, where there is adequate emphasis on curriculum, pedagogy, and so on. But at the same time, they will also be learning the basic disciplines, whether it is social science or science, very well. So 4-year undergraduate program is considered to be the basic or necessary basic qualification for a teacher at all levels. I mean, that is a basic qualification. So that is something even for the primary level. So that is an important step in this policy. And there can also be a few other important issues. there is an important you see, regarding the quality of schooling, we know that the learning achievements are an important issue. No, almost all the assessment, no, each year government also conducts assessment. The NGOs are also doing assessment, and most of these assessment shows that the majority of children are not learning what they are expected to learn in each grade, and that is why we see children in secondary grades, but no, who may not be even who may not be knowing even reading and basic reading and writing, or may not have the basic numeracy skills. So there is a focus on what is called the fundamental literacy and numeracy. It's more like a kind of a, I would call a literacy mission, but no, it is to ensure that each and every child in primary school acquire this basic capability for literacy and numeracy. And I think there is a lot of focus on that, and there is also a lot of literature coming on this particular issue. We can learn from global experience, and there are plans to put all these materials available to the teachers, and probably there is a lot more in-service training for teachers on this particular issue, and focus on this basic numeracy and literacy is going to be an interesting, important point. And I think as Amrita has mentioned, there will be no hard separation between arts and sciences. And I'm sure that Professor Ashok Das also mentioned that, because they are planning to have the similar kind of an approach in at least at the undergraduate level. The assessment is another issue where there is a lot of change. One, I think they are reintroducing examinations in classes I think 3, 5, and 8. This is somewhat different from the policy of no examination till grade 10. But though they are reintroducing examination, and there was a demand for reintroducing examination. But beyond that, I think, of course, then we also know that this is CCE, comprehensive and comprehensive examination. That was also proposed, but that didn't really take off, and there were problems in enforcement. And now they are suggesting what is called a holistic 360-degree multi-dimensional report, which means that it's not only the academic intellectual learning achievement, but there are other achievements in sports, peer group, or maybe emotional kind of capabilities. All these have to be valued. So, and moreover, the valuation should come from multiple sources. It's not only the teachers who should be evaluating children, but even the peer group should be evaluating them. So there is a certain a kind of a plan to have a holistic assessment as part of this process. I think then another important point is to have there is the operational part and the regulatory part. There is a need to separate these two, and there is a feeling that the regulation is to be done by an independent agency. So at the state level, there is going to be an independent accreditation or an assessment agency which also talks about the policies. And they felt that both private schools and public schools should be evaluated on the same grounds. There should not be any kind of differential grounds for evaluating government schools and sort of private schools. So that kind of an approach is suggested here. Of course, then there are plans to strengthen the teacher eligibility test, which is already in place. I've already mentioned about the so if I'm we have also mentioned about the school education. Okay, let me come down to, and okay, before that, I think one important issue is that this is also the time that we see quite a lot of initiative, technological initiatives in education. And we can see quite a lot of private companies coming up. The startups are coming up. They are making a lot of money, and they come out with a suggestion that they have some solutions which can be used by thousands of children. And probably there is a fear that it may make conventional schools irrelevant. If children are tuned to these educational apps and they are depending on these educational apps for the learning, what is the purpose of no conventional schools? And I'm sure now this question will be there in our minds when online education is also becoming very strong. But the approach taken by this particular policy is that the education technology is good, but as long as it is a tool in the hands of the teacher. So the teacher should be, teacher should be empowered. Technology should empower teacher, and it should not be to replace the teacher. And that is the kind of approach taken in this particular policy. And I see a lot of merit in that kind of an approach because the majority of children, or at least majority of children from the underprivileged groups, may not have direct access to technology. They may need additional support, and their parents may not be in a position to provide that additional support. So, of course, technology can be made available to the teacher, but no, there should be a teacher and there should be the support of the teacher, and it should not be a direct intermediation between or direct connection between the technology and the child. And that is the approach taken in this particular policy. But before closing my session, I think I would just want to say a few major challenges that I see in the implementation of the policy. I think the school education and higher education, everything can be implemented only if there is a substantial increase in the allocation of the funding for education, and they have recommended 6% of the GDP. But I'm not sure whether this is actually going to happen in near future, primarily because actually there are multiple demands on public resources, and the COVID also demonstrated the weakness of the public health infrastructure, and moreover there are other demands, poverty eradication, livelihood, lack of social security, and so on. So my sense is that it would be difficult to increase the allocation for education in near future, though that is very important. That's a very important point. The second important point is the human resources. For example, ultimately we need to depend on the teachers, the school teachers. Now we have the millions of school teachers, and their quality is important. Even when they retire, we need to have probably lakhs of new school teachers, and these lakhs of new school teachers have to be trained, and that means teacher education is important. And the quality of teacher education is not that good. We all know that. Now we recognize that problem. So it's a problem of quality of teacher educators. So the building up appropriate human resources, building up appropriate quality human resources will take, and I think it will happen. That improvement will happen only through a gradual process, and that could be the second major problem in terms of improving education, especially in the direction that this particular policy envisages. And third important policy, in my view, is going to be the politics. In the politics, actually, there's of course, at least in certain places, we are seeing a democratization in politics, a deepening of the democracy in politics. But deepening of democracy in politics is also enhancing the kind of demand from different social groups, and they want to participate in the education policy decisions. They want to have a role in the education policy decisions, and that is very important. But as part of this increasing role for different social groups, we are also seeing a lot more political interference in education process. And that, for example, if you just to give you a concrete example, I'm quite happy that now you have such educated people in Orissa as the vice chancellors and vice chairman of the Higher Education Council. But now in many states in India, I think there is a lot of politics in the appointment of vice chancellors, and there are also issues of corruption and so on. We see that quite a lot in Karnataka and many other places. So I think the kind of quality, autonomy, and improvement in education that we need to achieve, I don't know how far that can be achieved in the near term with the kind of the political development or the political processes that we see around in the country. And probably we need to wait a lot more time for the politics to mature into a stage where they should feel that no, education is something that has to be left to the academics, and that has to be left to the people who can take appropriate decisions, and there need not be any a kind of an excessive political intervention in the affairs of education. I don't see that emerging in India in the near future, and that could be another major constraint or hurdle in the implementation of the new education policy. I think I'll stop here. Amrinder, did I take too much time?
No, sir. No, sir. You have not taken more than what was assigned to you, because I spoke for about 8 minutes, and then you have only 20 minutes. So,
okay, great.
in fact, I should also tell the audience that Professor Santakumar works extensively on education now. Basically, he looks at the education of the indigenous communities, and he is comparing the indigenous education in India, Brazil, Indonesia, African countries. He's comparing the situation of the tribal or the indigenous communities across the globe, and he's trying to bring the best practices. And that's what, because Azim Premji University is focusing on the school education, and the philosophy has been that how to strengthen the government education, because they believe that private system cannot replace the government system. So that's why in that context, he's trying to suggest like what all policy interventions can be made in India. So thank you very much, sir, for your concrete points on the implications of the new education policy on the school education. Now I will invite Professor Ashok Kumar Das to speak on the implications of the new education policy for higher education. So at the end of your talk, we shall take the questions. So now I will invite all the audience that you can start typing your questions in the chat box, so that by the end of the speech of Professor Ashok Kumar Das, we can take up all the questions together. With this, I invite Professor Ashok Kumar Das.
Thank you, Amarendra, and Professor Santakumar, and all the enlightened audience. I think somewhere somebody's microphone is on. Hello?
Yes, sir. You're audible, sir.
I see a echo. I see an echo in my system. Now, I will take up, I'll focus, of course, on the higher education, but I will start by summarizing the background of this entity. Now,
Okay, just some interruption. I'll request Santakumar sir to keep his microphone in mute for time being, so that the recording quality.
I think I've done it. Oh, sorry.
I'm putting you in mute. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I think now it is very fine.
Yes.
One more somewhere is on. One more mic.
Okay, I'll check that, sir. I think it is mine. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, Amarendra. Now it is fine. Very good. Thank you. So, right from the days of independence, I made a count with somebody. About 13 task forces and commissions have looked at education. And it has been a six blind man going to look at an elephant and finding how the elephant looks and then create a trajectory. And of course, I'll add, as Professor Santakumar has done, the concepts that in 1938 Mahatma Gandhi brought in. Now, this is the background on which this NEP is built. Why I talked about the 13 task force and commissions? When I went through the vision of the National NEP 2020, it is identical. Of course, visions of education policy should not change, and it is identical, and by and large, everything remains identical. The issue remains in implementation. Then the key principles of NEP are really good. I have liked most of them. So I have no argument except that the key principles that MHRD has released, it has left out research and multidisciplinarity inclusion as some of the guiding major changes. Now, what NEP 2020 has done, it has done, to my view, it is my personal view, is it has done a good thing. It has looked at the deficiencies in the existing system. After all, after 70 years of independence and 70 years of the education policies, I think it is good that they have looked at the deficiencies, and so they have looked at the elephant from all sides, as many sides as they could. But to my feeling, and I'll justify it, they have looked it from a telescope at a distance. So the finer textures of the elephant's skin or the trunk or the tail, they have not been able to highlight. Why I tell that, and there is one biggest deficiency which they have not pointed out and which is very close to my heart, that there has been absolutely suboptimal effort towards inculcation of sustaining values and national ethos. They have written a lot about it, but they have not brought it into the policy in a manner where it becomes practically implementable. They have given philosophies about it, but today's youth do not listen to philosophy too much. It, as people say, it comes through one ear and goes out through the other ear. Now, few merits, as I have described. So NEP is good in that, and that it has also tried to borrow some of the good concepts which have succeeded in the West. For example, the early vocationalization is a hybridization of Mahatma Gandhi and the German early education concept. And to my mind, there is no problem there. In fact, I like that. But if you think in terms of how a public policy formulation steps happen, you people are in humanities and social science, you know better than me. Scientists do not make policies. But there are few things which are essential and which are missing in the formulation, at least in the statement. One is performance indicator. Short and long-term performance indicator must be an integral part of the policy. Second, management operationalization plans and timeline that was there in the draft document. It is not very clear in the 66-page or 67-page document. That is, and it has not gone into micro analysis. But what I have really felt bad is there has been no failure analysis. When I work on a large mega system. I work on a system with a large number of bodies, sentient bodies, people who can think are involved. I must make a failure analysis. And if I look at the lacuna or failure of the earlier policies, I must make a root cause analysis of earlier policies and then only bring in the remedial measures. To that extent, what they have done is they have analyzed the lacuna, they have seen the lacuna, they have brought in solutions by looking at the same way Indian Parliament was a democratic system, was a mixture of various things. I think they have brought in good things, but while synergizing all of them, because the root cause analysis of the failures have not been done fully. I'll give you one example. In principle, by bifurcating or separating the structure of the funding body, regulating body, and so on, is fine. But the basic problem is the structure of the government agencies that we put up in India. And where will UGC, so many people working in UGC go? They will all come to the Higher Education or Education Commission of India. And then what? We are where we were. They will stall most of it, and things may or may not happen. So what this policy needs are a performance indicators to be indicated. Then there is another thing which should have come in, which is a review by a designated committee, review of the performance. The high GECs and all that, I don't think there is any mention of the monitoring, review and monitoring. The light and tight control is fine, but it might go away. Now, there are extremely good things in school education. and they will influence the higher education immensely. Some of them are, of course, the concept, the analytical thinking, cognitive development. Then one of the major things I am greatly happy is about vocationalization. And I will not expand on it because Professor has talked about it, Amarendra has talked about it. 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and then vocational coming back to your streaming into the undergraduate level, and at every level they are integrating people together. So there is dignity of labor, value system, there is the dignity of vocational streams, and then also the an NSQF should now think in terms of vocationalization beyond level 6 very seriously and map it onto social science, map it onto liberal arts. And so there is a hell of a lot of things. And in fact, I'll tell you, there every state, including Odisha, should start preparing a platform, because what I expect is one fine morning there will be an administrative order and notification issued by the government of India, and most of the responsibility of implementation will come onto the states. And as Professor had said, the implementation is going to be actually a troublesome thing if you are not ready. And then the national mentorship program, special provision for gifted children, mandatory for every PhD student to do a program on pedagogy, come and teach. I think these are wonderful suggestions. Then emotional quotient by using artificial intelligence. Now, on paper, I like it very much. It is a wish list that I used to dream, but to bring it to the actual grassroots is, that is why I said this has multiple telescope in the technology era mounted, and the committee, Professor Kasturi Rangan, eminent person, but looked through the telescope. He has not looked at the skin of the elephant at all, and that is why this problem happens. Now, when we go to higher education salient feature, the most important feature and most troublesome feature is gross enrollment ratio of 50% by 2035 or 40 from present 26.3, which means 30 to 40 million more students and 15 million more faculty, because you are saying if everybody is to be assessed on this standard, you need 15 million more faculty and the 30, 35, 40 million more students. And today we have a problem of width, not depth. We have a problem is already we are beyond our capacity of providing quality educations because teachers are not there, and we are not able to manage 15-20% absenteeism. If the one teacher remains at home, the students go without studying. Now, the internationalization, I have a problem, because bringing Oxford and Harvard to here is a fantastic concept. I can sleep on it and dream and smile, but would they come? So that is again another problem. Commitment, Professor has already talked about 6% of GDP. They have promised that 10% of the public expenditure would go to 20%. Fine. New apex bodies, I am not commenting. I will not comment. Let it, I think the accreditation is going to be fine, but the rest of them, I think let the government decide the structure. I would expect that apart from the secretaries sitting there should be state academicians, there should be central academicians, and I am talking to Niger people, but still I am aware not all elitist educational institute people should be sitting there. Today, if you go to UGC, you will find mostly IITs, central universities, and they manage all the policy decision, and the policy decisions become very, very elitist. And that should not happen, because that is what is a problem. The multidisciplinary education and research university, again, admirable concept. I believe the choice-based credit system advocated that, but it was not been able to be implemented. But how it is going to happen, because you have no affiliated colleges. Today, about 1100 colleges in Odisha are at different geographical location. Now, as Professor said, there is politics involved. Most of the colleges are private colleges, have relation to politics. Now, the system says in 15 years' time, you gradually bring it to one third. So from 1100, 1200, I come down to 400. Which are the institutes which are going? The other option is make a cluster, make a geographically multi-campus organization. But we did an experiment in Odisha in Gangadhar Meher Kalikot University of a cluster university. It did not work in some sense. So I would look at a very good model, but I think a implementation structure must be worked out. The leadership pipeline, I have been talking about this for some time. Leadership training and leadership pipeline is extremely important. So we must, and if the policy talking about it, I must say it is great, and that should happen. Now, apart from this, the restructuring of the one great thing that they have suggested, and in Odisha we are trying to now take it to some degree of completion, is institutional development plans. In Odisha, we have seen, and I think it is across India, the head of the institution controls where the institution go in terms of policy and content and what is its goal, which trajectory it takes. And in universities, one vice chancellor comes, makes 3 buildings. The second vice chancellor comes, stops the library with useless books. Third comes, buys 1,000 computers. And the fourth comes, closes down all this and opens an outreach program. All are good in their own way. All are well-meaning people, but there is no coherence. So if there is an institutional development plan for 15, 20 years, which the chancellor of the university and the government both agree, it will be wonderful. And I think I have already spoken to government of Odisha to initiate this in a centralized manner, so that government of Odisha is a part of it and will help. And so the leadership pipeline and the institutional development plan, I think, are going to be very good. Every district to have a type 1 or type 2 university with 4,000 to 25,000 students is also a good thing. One thing is digital and internationalized campuses. Now, this digital campus in states like Odisha has not happened. I have a counter, we have suggested this. Something interesting that UNESCO has suggested, I read before some time, that access to internet and access to digital media should be part of the Right to Education Act. And this should be the duty of the government to supply. I do not know whether I am overstating this, but today if you find the pandemic has brought us precipitated action into everybody says, I am teaching on internet. And it has created a digital divide like nothing else. And somebody sent me, I think Suresh Saunta, one gentleman who organizes the South Odisha, he sent me a photograph which shows children sitting on the top branches of the trees with their mobile to catch the signal. I think this was put on Facebook, I kept it. So this is something that should be given. And they have said value education through vocationalization and awareness of cultural heritage. Again, another beautiful thing. And of course, they have said that HEIs, higher education institutions, should not be profit making, and 50% seats would be at a reduced rate. I hope this is they are able to implement. Content reforms, very good things. I like the flexible UG program. I like the student researcher concept. We have been fighting for a student researcher concept, which is being defeated because the faculty is not interested, the institutions are not interested. the academic credit bank, the exit options after every year that you get a certificate, diploma, degree. So these things are very good. But I have some reservation on the ground about the institutional autonomy. Now, the autonomy of the institution, the teacher has autonomy. It is an IIT concept, it is an IIM concept, it is a Harvard concept, where we have reached a certain level. Pardon me, I may be pardoned for saying this, and so unless there is a certain amount absolute integrity and position from which you cannot come down, I think the absolute autonomy, faculty autonomy on what he teaches, what he gives. Today, we find autonomous colleges. The evaluation is everybody is full mark in internal assessment. Everybody, if he submits a 5-page Xeroxed copy of some Xerox center as his dissertation in project, the teacher gives him full mark. So I believe there should be a check and balance mechanism. There may be a renormalization, but implementation of this is going to be very tricky, and they should do this. A good thing suggested is open and distance learning to have equal status to the actual physical learning, blackboard, chalk blackboard method. Now, it is a good thing, but how are they going to do this? Now, we are a mindset, maybe in 20 years, ODL would become good and as rigorous as the regular universities. So these kind of things and the technology platforms, the NETF, National Educational Technology Forum, all these are, I think, very good systems. And the faculty reforms are all for the good. Professor has talked about the 4-year foundation, B.Ed. Something which caught my imagination and attention, and I am so happy. And because I was always biased towards research, and I thought state universities were the lower part of the research divide in this country. Now you have the state universities supplying human resources for the nation building. The good, great institutes provide human resources for building the world at large. They go to Silicon Valley, they go to US, they go to Europe, and those countries progress. Now, when they come back with dollars, fine. But these people, the state university students, who probably cannot speak English very well, but some of them, the foundation is terrific, but they do not get research opportunity. I see an opportunity in the National Research Foundation, which is supposed to have an annual kitty of 20,000 crore. And this is beyond what the DST or ICCSAR or DAE, Board of Research in Nuclear Sciences, they give. They will, and the biotechnology department, it is apart from that. And this money would be given through a funding mechanism of competitive research funding in national thrust area. I think this is wonderful, but I hope, and they have also said that state universities, which need to be brought up to a certain level, would be mentored. So they will appoint national research mentors, and access to modern research tools to be made universal to all higher education institutions. At least everyone would have an instrumentation center, everybody would have a high performance computation center. And then you put pressure on the faculty after making very rigorous recruitment rules that they must deliver and they must do research. I found this good. I think there is nothing much that can go wrong about it except human beings. And if human beings with bad intentions come in, as usual, 90% will go to IITs and IIMs and people who have been taking money continuously, and 10% will come to state universities. State of Odisha in its proposal had proposed that 50% should be reserved for state university quota under national research mentors, and it should be distributed there with clearly defined performance indicators and outcomes. I hope that happens. Accreditation assessment, I think it is a good idea to distribute the accreditation, quantify the accreditation, and have same rule for all of them. And so I think this is extremely fine. Financing higher education, I am not an expert. I suspect that they have been very ambitious. They have talked about philanthropic investment. They have talked about investment from religious, tapping into religious corpus. I do not know why Tirupati Devasthanam will pay to Utkal University instead of building a Tirupati University by themselves. Maybe they can tap in Odisha to Lord Jagannath's funds, but otherwise, I do not think this funding, let government take care of it, let government give 20% of public expenditure, and let government assure there cannot be, some people see this as a vehicle that it will get reduced. The funding would get gradually reduced and self-funding will increase. Maybe in 20 years. The good thing is they have advocated the vocationalization and incubation and entrepreneurship development. I think we have already started taking care of it. And I believe that if entrepreneurship gets the desired prestige that it gets, that an IAS and a budding entrepreneur can get married with equal opportunities, they have equal access to the marriage market, then I think students will go. The greatest objection I hear when we ask somebody go into business, his mother says that isko ladki nahi milegi. So this is one of the issues that has to be handled. But I think policy-wise, NEP has been good. Learning languages and Indian knowledge system, that is another thing that I have appreciated, and I think it is incredibly well put. Making an Indian Institute of Translation and Interpretation, I think it is wonderful. I think translation, natural processing of Indian language, delving into classical languages of India has been a very greatly deficient, and I think this is something should happen. Charting a step on this, I think the only thing you can wait for the government notification, central government notification, and preparing the background means I think every university should start making a institutional development plan. If the research people who want to get into research should start iterating in national thrust area, making competitive proposals to bid when the money comes, so that is our responsibility, and the elders should start doing this, and maybe get states vital development sector into national research foundations thrust area, catalyzing revamping of curricular content of UG and PG, and bringing in the vocational courses that are more important, and changing the structure before the Higher Education Commission of India starts or the General Education Council starts changing, I think could be done, creating some amount of research infrastructure, synergizing, making a plan of synergizing the vocational and the general areas. I was having a discussion in the State Technical Education Department about this, and I think 6th, 7th, 8th could be informal without assessment, and that could be sensitization, and then serious vocationalization can start from 8, 9, 10, 9, 10, 11, 12, where the ITIs and the polytechnics, which are large number, can come in. And then, of course, the course structure should take care as you go up in the ladder. Financing student support to economically disadvantaged groups, socially and economically student. I think the alumni, the my college, my school kind of programs where it is there should be able to come in. So now I think after this policy has come, the good parts of the policy we should take advantage of and get ready. My take is the state which will be ready earliest will take the first lot. Who knows where the money will be there for a second lot or not. So I have been telling people that let us iterate and let us get ready on areas where state can make a mark and state can become ready. Because after seeing this, I believe that the good parts we should move in. This is the first policy which also talks, at least in the draft, which is the sequence of implementation. It talked about sequence of implementation in the draft. That was a good thing, because earlier governments would take number 5 because it is convenient, number 10 because it will earn votes, number 15 because again it is vote catching, and ignore the rest. And that was suicidal. So they have given a, I must give credit to Professor Kasturi Rangan for having done that. So by and large, this is my take on the policy. There was, I believe this is in challenges. I have already talked about the challenges. So I think we should take it in that manner. It is a dream policy. It is a wish list policy. If it gets implemented without being elitist and getting the pipeline onto the grassroots, that benefit can go to the grassroots, then it would be wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for the elaborative discussion on every point on the implications of the higher education, of the NEP for the higher education. Now we have got a lot of questions, and now we would actually take up all those questions. But before I take up the questions of the audience, I would like to ask one question to Professor Santakumar. So the question is that if you look at the school education in India, till now the educational qualification has been kept at 12th level only. You know, somebody, particularly in Odisha, I have seen that if you want to be a teacher in a school, particularly it is called as, you know, say PGT and TGT. So if it is TGT, that means if you are teaching up to say up to 8th class, then if you have only passed, if you have completed only 12th standard and you have got a degree, so that training program for the teachers, then you are eligible to become a teacher. Similarly for the high schools, that means from 9th onwards up to 12th standard, if you have got only UG education and got training, then you are eligible to become a teacher. Now that technology has changed so much and the world has changed so much, do you think that this much of qualification is sufficient to become a teacher? Why I am asking this? Today in Odia, in a Odia newspaper, Samaj, somebody has written, in fact the director of SCRT has written this article in today's Samaj. The title is that searching for a teacher for the 21st century. Okay? And he says that the 21st century has now a lot of challenges because there is internet and there is Google. So how will the students value the teacher? And if the teacher has got only limited education, then they will not be able to link the education or relate the education with the global world and the global scenario. So that way probably our education system will remain outdated and will not be able to link. And when we are talking about the vocationalization of education at early level of school, then probably we will fail in that. So that is a question to Professor Santakumar. And then coming to Professor Ashok Kumar Das, the question I was thinking is that do you think that gradually, at least in Odisha, now the political interference is increasing in the higher education? And I see that with the common entrance for the universities. That is probably a starting point for increasing political interference in the higher education. Why I am saying this? Now the notification is coming from the government, not from the universities. So is it the starting point? And in fact, recently somebody also had written, Professor Satyakam Mishra had written an article in Samaj. He had vehemently opposed the autonomy of the universities to recruit the teachers. So here he was basically arguing for the basically giving these responsibilities to the OPSC, Odisha Public Service Commission. So again, so I see that as a political interference, and of course the spending money that 6% of GDP that would come and that has been raised by others. So I think these are two questions, but now I will only take the questions for Professor Santakumar. So my question remains, and other than that, now the other questions to Professor Santakumar is one is the three language formula. What is your view on the three language formula and its impact on tribal education? And then again, Dr. Amarjit Nayak asked, I agree with Professor Santakumar that spending 6% of GDP in near future seems improbable due to multiple demands on public resources. So with a dearth of human resources, that is teachers, qualified teachers, what could be the way ahead? And then the other question by Suresh Saunta is how the NEP will impact the tribal communities, and and then Professor Mithali Chinara is asking this question: how we can define mother tongue unambiguously in the Indian context? How the three language formula be implemented for the children of the migrants? And then Biswajit Apart is asking this question. Maybe I am taking too much of questions at a time. Sir, you can unmute now, and if you are able to see the questions in the
I think maybe I will answer this, and then you have to shift to Professor Ashok Das, no? Because
yes.
Otherwise it will create trouble. Okay,
Yes.
then if there is time, we can come back to the other questions.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think quickly, I agree with you that actually the qualification of the teacher is an issue. In fact, now we have this wrong idea that people need only lesser qualification to teach the younger children. That is incorrect. Actually, in fact, now, teaching younger children is require a lot more capabilities if you really want to make a impact. And I think that is why developed countries generally focus on a much higher level of education, like Finland, for higher level of education for school teachers in general. They may even have PhDs. They may even prescribe PhD for the school teachers. So, but at the same time, we should understand the difficulty in India that the enrollment rate has gone up only very recently. And we know that even today, 50% of the teenagers leave school without completing school education. And and if you are thinking about the jobs, quite a lot of people are having higher education, and they may be looking for some other kind of jobs, and they may not be available as school teachers. So the available pool of the school teacher is very limited. Ideally, we should have much more qualified teachers. So I think in terms of the quality of teachers, now, even if we prescribe a very ideal policy, the change is going to be very gradual. I mean, we have to live with that. I think there is no point. There is no point in saying that no. Of course, we should make every effort to improve the quality. We need to make every effort, but at the same time, we should also expect only a gradual improvement in the quality of the teachers. The other point that I want to pick up is about the language issue. I'm not sure whether they are actually insisting on a three-language policy. The NEP actually focuses on that. Now, it is better if the education at least up to the primary grade can be in the mother tongue or local language, regional language, and so on. It is left very flexible. So it can be defined in different ways. For example, this can be used to strengthen the education in their own language for the tribal children. So this policy can be used to strengthen that. No, they can say that at least up to the primary grades, or even up to 7th standard, they should be using the tribal language as the medium of instruction. Think about migrant children. Migrant children, one way to say, for example, children coming from Orissa and living in Bangalore, they should have the right to learn in their own mother tongue. Of course, it can be some compulsion on the state government, especially in cities, to provide education in other languages. Or there are many people who may think that they have their mother tongue, but they are living in a different area, and they should have the freedom to learn in the language that they are comfortable. In that case, even English medium should be acceptable. English medium should be acceptable in certain cases, or the Hindi medium should be acceptable in certain other cases. So I think the the language policy is left probably intentionally vague or in a flexible way. So it can be interpreted in a more enabling way, or I would say that no, there will be a tendency to interpret in certain cases in an inflexible way, and that can be harmful. The other point is that I think the resources are not available, but my sense is that, and if you ask me this question, I'm not a person who actually spent that much effort to design a very good policy. That is, I will not spend that much time, because now it is relatively easy to design a very good policy, but now making improvement on the ground is the difficult part. So in that sense, I would say that no, any policy has this particular limitation. And is it really, I mean, if this policy is encouraging different actors, including people like, Professor Ashok Das, vice chancellors, school leaders, education secretaries, etc., or even school teachers, college teachers, we are all capable in our own limited sphere. If the policy is actually encouraging all of us to take small steps in our own sphere to improve the quality of education, to encourage students to do research, to connect the teaching with their own life, and that will make a difference. I think in one sense, I don't expect a kind of an immediate improvement in the education system of India just because we have adopted the new education policy. I think that I will stop here for the minute, and then you can hand over, you can ask questions to Professor Ashok Das.
Okay. Now, thank you, sir, for addressing the questions. Now, to Professor Ashok Das, the question starts from Professor Nikhil. The funding to central and state universities are already lopsided. The latter caters to the majority of the students, but gets a very small share of funds. So, will it be addressed in the new system? That is question one.
Amarendra, what I'll do is I'll read out
Yes,
one
sir.
of the question and answer. I'll go to yours first. I think you mute yours. Okay. Now, your question is extremely relevant. Let me tell you how it happens in Odisha. Now, everything that is done is through a process of catalysis. Catalysis in chemical reaction is not a part of the reaction. It only stays away. But if something is not happening, it pushes it to happen. It makes it energetically convenient to happen. Now, if you see the common entrance, which you said, 3 universities of Odisha are conducting the common entrance. Utkal in humanities, it is the joint entrance of IIT model. There is an apex committee of vice chancellors which does this. And the evaluation will be done by the universities. Question will be set by the universities. What all that state is doing, state is having a central digital facility which uses its software to prepare a merit list, takes the options from the student. And why it happened? Because earlier years, a child has to appear at 7 university entrances. And if physics entrance is on the same day in Sambalpur and Utkal, then he has to appear in one and leave the other. Or if it is one day next, he will have to rush in a bus. 1,000 rupees or 500 rupees for application material. Now you imagine for a poor student to do this, I have never liked it. But unfortunately, the universities by themselves were not getting together. They wanted a catalyst to bring them together. So all we have done, all the government has done, is saying that we will charge a minimal fee from the students, much less than what the universities are charging, but provide a centralized facility for you people to do the common entrance. If by next year Utkal says we will have a university coordination committee to continue the practice, then happily we will go there. There is no issue. There is no government interference in this. Because not only this, you have also agreed that the question and the answer keys will be published in the same evening as the exam is over. So all that has been done is catalysis. Similarly, whatever activity you have seen during the last 2 years, are part of catalyzing a movement in Odisha where 12 universities do not go in different directions in a chaotic situation, but they are catalyzed, and there is a committee of the vice chancellors, all vice chancellors, they decide exactly what the university should do. Even the common curriculum, the vice chancellor group did it. Utkal took the coordination. What did I do or government do? Government went and sat there and provided, if there is any funding things, the funding was provided to the universities to do this activity. So as far as I know and I am concerned, university autonomy is the ultimate, and universities should exercise their autonomy. But student is the final goal, and Odisha state has an objective of equity, excellence with equity. We want the last bench student in the last bench to be educated and also to do excellently and not pay enough exorbitant money in the state university. So everything so far has been towards that. I believe that if the VCs want that certain activities they want to take, they will take. You see, there are different quota system in different universities, different process for different university. The student eventually gets tortured and exploited in the entire process. Student torture and exploitation is the responsibility of the government. That at least you should agree. Now I come to Professor Chinra's question. Right now, as I have understood the new education policy, the assessment grade that you have in National Assessment Agency, your accreditation grade, is the index for your funding. And therefore, central funding or state funding, as you know, now all schemes of center has a state share and a central share. So even if you are getting RUSA money 42% comes out of the state and 58% comes out of the center. So I believe that funding situation is going to improve. The additional expenditure will grow gradually. I think it is going to grow gradually because once this pressure comes, center has to yield to give more money. So I don't think there is going to be a major problem, but state universities will all have a problem. And state universities have to understand that they have to look at research funding as a primary resource. If they do not look at research funding and think state government or the central government would give every money, I don't think that is possible. That is not even the new philosophy. Even the best universities in the world get huge amount of money generate as research funding. So I think the way forward for the state universities is to tighten their research headband and get into this and give outcomes. Then shall I see myself and answer one more?
Yes, sir. We can do that, sir. That will be good. Sir.
There is one question regarding MPhil abolition and whether this will improve the quality or denigrate the quality. Let me give you my personal opinion. It is not a government's opinion. It is not anybody's opinion. In my personal opinion, MPhil was a superfluous degree and it was introduced without having given sufficient thoughts. It is a research degree and people have been using it to get 2 marks, 3 marks in their lecturership or assistant professorship interviews. There is, right now you have a pre-doctoral course. Right now in the new education policy, you have a 4-year graduate studentship where last year is fully research, you will be introduced, and in masters, the last year is also devoted to research if it is a 2 years master. To my mind, you would be sufficiently into research by the time you complete your masters, and it is good that MPhil has gone. I have been praying and trying to remove MPhil from the university, but then there is always a andolan or a movement when this issue comes up, but I think that is good. I'll only answer one more and hand it over. Suresh Saunta, who has asked that hilly and tribal areas, they are not able to accessing online classes. how government is looking for them. Government is trying to provide digital infrastructure and bandwidth to all areas. But it is true today, I have seen the photographs you have sent, and that it is a difficult process, and it is to acknowledge that unless the internet or digital backbone exists, everything, every building that we are trying to construct will collapse, because online education, that is the basic foundation. And so I have, again, in my personal capacity, has tried advocating that availability of internet and some bandwidth should be a student's right to education, part of his right to education. Because if there is a pandemic and everybody is running around in circles and just telling each other go and teach online without understanding what online education entails, this becomes a catastrophic situation. So I think it is needed, and I am sure state government has realized it, and there are mechanisms of blended and flipped education formulated, at least, that we are trying to think of, which will address this issue somewhat. But miracles do not happen in state, so don't expect a miracle. Some 2 or 3 steps, I am sure, definitely will come your way. Thank you. I think you can hand over to Professor Santakumar.
Okay, thank you, sir. Now, probably we can take up 2 more questions by Professor Santakumar. The first question is by Biswajit Apart, that private schools are here to stay. Thankfully, new education policy recognizes that and proposes better regulation mechanism. In this context, I would ask, should we argue for a common school system? That is one question. And then second question is whether NEP is suggesting anything to arrest the declining quality in the public schools and make it comparable to the leading private schools. Yeah, these are the 2 questions I think we can take, and then, yeah. So over to Professor Santakumar.
I think I think if you think by common school system, I don't know whether you are meaning to have a kind of a common board system, or to have a both or in terms of ownership. I would personally say that, or that is my personal view, that there is a need to strengthen government schools. There is a need to strengthen government schools, and for primary reason is that actually, in my view, the majority of the private schools are of poor quality. If you take the quality of the teachers, if you take the infrastructure, if you take almost any of these indicators, the majority of the private schools are of poor quality in India. There may be a few good private schools here and there, but the majority of private schools are of poor quality. I think there may be only very few reasons why even the middle class or the lower middle class are interested in private school, and that is primarily because of the lack of English medium, or maybe a certain specific attention to the passing of examinations and so on. So in my view, and that is tried out in some states also, in my view, I think the government schools should accommodate these demands of the parents. For example, now, when government schools started English medium and government schools started extra attention to children to pass their examination, there is a trend that the children are coming back to the government schools. There is a sort of a reverse migration to the government schools happening, for example, in Kerala, and there is something similar happening in a few other states also. I think that is a good trend. So in one sense, I think the share of children using private schools should go up, and that is the trend. That is the trend in all the developed economies. Actually, I would say that the share of children using private school is much higher in India, and that is not desirable. A major part of the children should be using government schools, and we should move in that direction. But there I'm not for a banning private schools, but in general, I would say that the share of children using private schools should come down. I think I just forget the first question, Amarendra. You have to unmute. You have to.
The common curriculum that Biswajit was asking, and then second question is, yes.
Yeah, I think there we have to have much more flexibility, because probably there may be a lot more different needs, and the common school system can also be genuinely misused and used. So I would say that probably a higher level of flexibility would be useful at that level. Okay, Aminendra.
Okay, I think yeah, we had a very wonderful session, and in fact,
Amarendra, can I interrupt you for one moment?
yes,
There
sir.
was one question on research which I would like to answer. I think the last but one or something.
Sir, please, sir. Yeah.
Uh, so there was a question that in the marathon of research funding, the central universities always win, and the state universities are having a problem. Just one moment. So this in the marathon, it is true. It has been true so long, but as you are aware, whoever has asked this question, that the state government since last 1 year has started a state research mentorship program, state funding program. Whatever small effort this is, two things must happen: that the faculty must very seriously take research, because in the next 10 years, if you do not do research, you will be nowhere. You will need research funding. We will ready to facilitate mentorship for you. So we are giving you a handicap to win the marathon. So take the handicap and win the marathon. I think that was all. Thank you.
Yes, actually, in fact, I was going to speak about that only. That actually, under the leadership of Professor Ashok Kumar Das, it is for the first time Odisha has started providing funds to the college teachers to do research. Similarly, now students, PhD students in Odisha are also going to get scholarship. So, the initiative taken by Professor Ashok Kumar Das, and I hope this initiative will continue, and the funds for these initiatives will also increase in future. I think those are the 2 points I wanted to make. And now coming to the research among the college students, I think that for that we have to do something at least in the state, and of course that is not happening in other states also, except those elite colleges like say St. Stephen's or Sri Ram College, all those things. But in the state generally, even though we have a small dissertation, but we all know that actually what kind of dissertation students submit in the degree colleges. So I think probably state or the university can take some centralized initiatives for this, so that the quality of the dissertations improve. And similarly for the science colleges, we have seen that many colleges do not have laboratories, and they do not have sufficient staff to do the experiments. And so I think with that only we can promote research in the colleges in Odisha and in other states. So with these words, I would like to thank again Professor Santakumar and Professor Ashok Kumar Das for giving your valuable time and speaking extensively on the aspects of school education and the higher education. And both of you are passionate researchers. And of course, Professor Ashok Kumar Das, although was an eminent scientist in BRC, now after he has taken up the responsibility in the state, he has been pushing so many issues, basically how to improve the quality of the research. And I hope that you get more tenure in that office, so that at least the higher education will face some improvement in the quality. And Professor Santakumar, I've already told you that he has been passionately working on the indigenous education and how education can facilitate the development, and how it can bridge the inequalities between the different sections of the society. So with these words, I again thank both of you for giving your valuable time. So on behalf of Niger, I extend hearty gratitude to both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Namaskar, sir.
Okay, so we now conclude. Now we'll close this.
Yeah.